Hey guys, it's Sign here with Hobbies of Man once again, and today we're doing another comic book review. Today we're looking at Superman Volume 2. This is called The Chained, and this is by Joshua Williamson. This is the Williamson run that started with the Dawn of DC stuff. And it has a lot of artists this time, which is actually not great in my opinion. Like, none of the artists were bad, but it's the lack of consistency that kind of pulls away a little bit from the enjoyment of the story, which is a bit of a negative. But let me see if I can come up with the name of some of them, just so you know who I'm talking about. So, okay, Joshua Williamson's the writer, like I said. Then Gleb Melkinov does issues 6 through 8. David Baldion also does issue 8, 11, and 12. Bruno Redondo does 9 and 10. Dan Jurgens does issue 7. Edwin Galman does issue 7. Norm Rapmond does 7, 8, and 12. Jamal Campbell does issue 8. And Chao Felipe does issue 10. And then there's a smaller but still pretty significant amount of colorists involved and a few letterers. So that's not great. That's way too many artists on 5 or 6 issues, right? I think how many issues? Yeah, this is 6 issues total. That is a bit much in my opinion. I think that that's just too much. It's not great. And the lack of consistency across the art just makes it not my favorite. So, yeah. The publisher obviously is DC. This is a DC book. It's a Dawn of DC. And the demographic is Teen Plus. The genre is superhero, sci-fi, and then one of the issues is a bit of a Western style story. Not too much, to be honest with you. It's like pretty basic, and it does not have an adaptation. Although if they did like animated shows based on the Dawn of DC, I would not be mad. I think that these stories are a little bit better than the ones from New 52 that were adapted, and it would be a pretty interesting setup because a lot of these stories focus on the family aspect of the superheroes, right? Like the Green Arrow story that Joshua Williamson also wrote focuses on the family stuff. The Superman stories, especially Action Comics, focuses on the Superman family. And that sort of expanded cast dynamic could work very, very well as a concept, right? So I don't really mind. I think it'd be nice to have them animated, but I'm not quite sure that we will, especially with James Gunn heralding like a new universe, right? In ratings points, a 4 out of 5, mostly due to the art being inconsistent with so many artists, right? Premise-wise, basically Lex was almost killed at the end of the previous issues, and the Revenge Squad is ready to make their move. The Lex Luthor Revenge Squad. Basically, it's like a Legion of Doom that hates Lex Luthor and want to kill him, and by extension, they want to get rid of Superman, right? Or they want to recruit Superman because they think he also hates Lex, which is fundamentally misunderstanding Superman, right? But first, they need to get Superman out of the way. So that's what this book mostly focuses on, right? It opens up with a surgery for Lex. Then he barely makes it through the surgery. Lois can't really deal with her job as the editor. I think that she was expecting it to go one way, and it's actually going a different way because there's just too many things, right? And it's kind of surprising to her that Perry White was able to do this all. Superman and Mercy have a chat. He gets information out of her about the Chained, which is the first metahuman that Lex Luthor imprisoned. And they go find him, and it's a man trapped in solitary confinement. And this was done by Lex when he was a young man, and Superman decides to go free him, right? As this happens, we learn that it was supposed to be Sammy Stryker, who was a person of interest. I'm not really super caught up on the Superman lore, so I don't know who the Stryker family is, but it's someone that was important to Metropolis. Lex Luthor betrayed him and then put him away. And as Superman releases him, Sammy Stryker goes berserk, right? And he becomes the Chained as his villain name, right? Perry decides to run for mayor, which is pretty fun. It's an interesting kind of new take on the character, and I'm sure it'll be interesting, but I'm not sure if it's really all that important. Sammy outmaneuvers the Super Family, which is pretty interesting, pretty cool. He joins up with Grafton Farm, and then Lois and Lex have a bit of a chat. Then we get introduced to Letitia Luthor, who shows up to see her son, but also because she's upset at him. She's like, okay, he's in prison, he's been attacked, he has been forced into an operation and is barely recovering. This is my chance to come back and take the company back away from him, right? She brings along with her Lena Luthor, who is Lex Luthor's daughter, and I think she's supposed to be like a clone of Superman in some way, right? That's kind of the idea there, but I'm not sure. I don't know the lore. And elsewhere, Brainiac is approaching Earth because this is setting up the House of Brainiac storyline as well, right? Then, as Brainiac is approaching Earth, he sends the Zarnian mercenaries down to Earth, and I actually like these a lot. They're pretty fun. They all have like Hispanic based names or Spanish based names, which are pretty funny. Most of them seem to be animal based names, and it's pretty cool. Lobo means wolf in Spanish, right? So that's probably where they get it. But I don't remember any of their names specifically. I didn't write them down. And they are attacking different planets in order to just kind of sow chaos so that Brainiac can show up and kind of take over, right? Back to Metropolis, Sammy is attacking again. Superman dons the Kryptonite gauntlets, which weaken Sammy, so apparently his powers are based on Kryptonian DNA-based enhancements. And his powers are actually kind of similar to Superboy, the original Superboy, right? So this weakens Sammy, being hit by the gauntlets, so Connor can trap him with his his psychokinetic abilities. And as they're doing this, Superman gets hurt. The sun starts healing him, or he goes do some sun healing, directly in the Fortress of Solitude, I think. And when he comes back, he and Marilyn Moonlight are actually sent back in time to the Wild West. And I was a bit confused actually at this point, because the Wild West is supposed to have only happened about 40 years before this story, but at the same time, in the real world, it's been much more than 40 years. I guess it was 40 years from when Superman started, being written in the 1930s, right? So I was a bit confused at the timeline there. I guess it would have been too much if Superman was sent back 60 years or, 70 years, or I think maybe at this point it's like 90 years. Or maybe a little bit over 100 years into the past, right? So I kind of get that, but it was a bit confusing to understand. I forgot that there was a sliding timescale thing in comic books, right? So it's not too important, but they do end up in the Wild West. He meets Graft and Farm as young children who are very intelligent, and then has a bit of a standoff with this character called Terraman, and then uses his time machine to go back to the present, which is pretty useful. And there's also this kind of cyclical loop thing where Marilyn Moonlight manages to encourage herself to become a superhero so that she becomes Marilyn Moonlight, right? There's this kind of, is it a bootstrap or a grandfather paradox? I think it's one of those, right? But it's like a cyclical nature kind of concept. And then when they come back to the present, they're immediately attacked with kryptonite gas, which of course hurts Superman a lot. And it turns out that Letitia Luthor is part of the Revenge Squad because she wants to kill Luthor or get rid of him in some way so that she can take her company back, because apparently Lex's dad was not really the main guy running the company. It was Letitia, and Lex stole it from under her, right? Which, understandable. Luthor would definitely do that, right? They use red kryptonite to make Superman really, really angry. And as he's attacking Lex, he gets stabbed with a kryptonite dagger. Then we come back to background information for some of the other characters. We learned that Lex Luthor, as a young man, teamed up with Graft and Farm to develop the powers of kryptonite, to understand it. And when he found out all of the stuff that he needed to find out about it, he got rid of them. And then after he got rid of them, he created kryptonite that could hurt humans, which I assume kryptonite already could because it's a radioactive space rock, but it just didn't affect them in the same way that it does Superman, right? But apparently he made it so it does affect them similarly. And so now, because he has created this problem that has been released into the atmosphere, he has to don a Superman suit. So Lex Luthor has to dress like Superman and must solve the problems he created while Clark works at Supercorp to fix the other issues. And the reason why this is happening is because Clark is healing from the kryptonite gas, so he doesn't have his powers. So someone else has to step in, and they use Lex because that's kind of like that dichotomy that these characters have, right? And as they do this, they work through this. Superman accepts Supercorp. Lex manages to be somewhat heroic, and they manage to, be successful in their plans, right? everyone gets put in prison, but Lobo has arrived and he heralds the coming of Brainiac, which is really cool. Very, very fun. I like the idea of Lobo teaming up with Brainiac and having this kind of like Silver Surfer and Galactus kind of relationship. I think it's pretty fun. That's basically where this ends, and it was pretty enjoyable. Broadly speaking, the storytelling is great. I think Williamson is a great author for Superman, but the art was so inconsistent. It was always good. Like, every single piece of art was enjoyable, but it's like comic books are supposed to be greater than the sum of their parts. And when the art continuously changes, it is actually lesser than the sum of its parts. It can never be more because there's a lack of cohesion, right? In terms of characters, we get introduced to Letitia and Lena, and Sammy Stryker is kind of like the new character that gets introduced here as well. We learn a little bit about Superman and Lois. We learn a bit of Marilyn Moonlight, so we kind of learn her origin story to an extent. And we learn a little bit more about Grafton Farm. And of course, Brainiac is coming, and this is kind of concerning, right? In terms of world building, we flesh out the young Lex Luthor story, which is pretty valuable. The timeline becomes a little bit unclear, like I said, because Grafton Farm used to be children in the Wild West, which in real life was like 100 years ago, but within the context of DC, it was only about 40 years ago, right? So I guess that's because of the sliding timescale stuff, where everything technically happens the year that Superman started releasing, right? Which is the 1930s, around somewhere, right? It's not possible in 2025, but it is possible if it was 1939, which is more or less what I just said, right? That could work. In terms of artwork and fan service, I've already mentioned it a few times, but like I said, there's too many artists. The inconsistency is bad, but each artist is good in isolation. It's just a problem when it's all together, right? And there's no fan service elements. Like, there's no, cheesecake, if that makes sense, right? Ratings-wise, 4 out of 5. The art brings it down from a perfect storyline for me, because I think this is really great. I just don't like the inconsistency, right? So there you go. Those are my thoughts here on Superman Volume 2, The Chained. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys next time.